Welcome to Yukon North 61. I hope the coronavirus is treating you with some ease. We're all at home. We got our daughter from Acadia. Since university is closed, of course she can't find work because everything's closing down. So hopefully somebody figures out how to move forward with this. It's kind of scary. Anyway, when I was doing my last video on the Big Bore 94, I went to show off the side ejection, and I did it slowly, and it's barely kicking the rounds out of there. So I took a look at it, and the ejector, which I can't really show you, is really lazy. So I think I need to do a good cleaning to start with. So I've already taken off the scope, the slings. I've got my screwdriver set, punches, gunsmith pliers, which are parallel all the time, little drift. I got a dummy case so that I can test ejection, and I thought I'd show you a little bit about how to take down the 94. Step one, on the left side of the receiver there's this little screw, and this screw's only function is to keep a pin in. So we're going to take that out with a proper fitting. We're going to put that over there, and then we're going to turn it around, and you will see there's a little hole there, and we got to find a punch to fit that hole right there, and we got that little pin out. So that's step one. Next step on an original 94, this is a screw. On these newer ones, you've got to take this screw out on the bottom, and then you can simply push that pin out. So that's a little different design. So that's step number two. Now we should be able to take this whole assembly out. Let's see what that looks like. Yep. So that whole assembly now lifts out like that. And it's pretty dirty in there, so that's probably a good thing to be doing this. It's probably never been done. Okay. Now if you jog that forward, the whole thing removes. So now we've got that out of there. Okay. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is remove the carrier screw. And so that's the screw there. We're just going to remove it. And then that should allow us to take out the carrier. This also acts as a pin. And now we've got the carrier out. Okay. Here we go. Nothing's in there tight. That's what I like about a new rifle. See, that's got, used to have red thread stuff on it, but that doesn't seem to be working, and then we just ship that out. So that's slick as can be. Okay. Question is, will I get it back together again? Sure we will. Okay. Leave that over here. Remove the hammer upwards and towards the rear. I wonder if we've got to take that spring away first. There's our locking lug, and you can see how much crud we have in there. Yeah, so no wonder it's not working properly. This was full of oil. And then this should just come right out. So there. We have it apart. And now I'm going to degrease a lot of this stuff because it's just caked with grease. So that's the problem. So it's a little different than the book, but I'm sure we'll figure out how to put it back together, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. And you can see there's the extractor, there's the ejector. It's on this little spring here, and it's just a little slow, but there's some crud in there. So let's there's a fair bit of crud everywhere, so we're gonna start by degreasing it. So I usually just get something out of the fridge that's the right size. So this is a yogurt container, so it's got lots of size to it. So we'll give it a good cleaning here. You can see all that crud coming out there. Basically, I just saved you a lot of footage of spraying a bunch of stuff here with the crud cutter. Also a fair bit of crud in these sidewalls, so I'm just going to give that a really fast clean. Get rid of all the heavy grease and replace it with really light oil. It's important, I think, unless you're in winter use, it's important to replace it with a little bit of some sort of protectant, because this is going to take everything out of all the little oil products that were in here, all the dried grease. It's going to take it off, leaving bare metal and leaving it potentially prone to rust, which is not what, of course, what we want to see. So, but of course, forgive me for using paper towel. This stuff's becoming very rare, isn't it? It's probably worth more than the gun. I'm going to put a wee dust in a rem oil in there. And wipe some of it out with cloth. Just give it something to coat the microscopic pores there, and no extra in there. But that should probably do it. Okay, it's all degreased, so I'll give it a little bit of rem oil, a little bit of light oil, just to keep the rust away. So, first thing we'll do is we'll put the bolt back. And you can see that on the spring there's no longer any crud. It seems to be running smoothly. Still doesn't have too much snap, but a little more snap. So hopefully that's going to work better. It's also important to do this sort of work to make sure that the gun's going to work in extreme cold weather. Okay, so that's the first step. Yeah, this thing has to be at the bottom. Small retaining caught at the lower must be driven out to release the firing pin. Well, this just came right out. Yeah, but you can tell that retaining bolt goes through here at some point. So that has to go in with that to the bottom. Okay. And then we can put that in there. Like so. Yeah, and then that bolt, this bolt will drive in there and keep that together. And it's held in by the screw. Okay. Yeah. that's the, basically that's the lug. And that's the lug raceway. Okay. To compress this spring, you got to use your big fat Saskatchewan farmer fingers and punch, drift. There's a little hole in there that will allow you to have that under compression. The only way to do it. Okay, compressing that spring is a son of a gun, so we've done it with this little thing here. Let's see if we can make this go. I think it fits in like that. So now let's remove that and see if we've got her. Hopefully nobody loses an eye. Okay. So I think that is correct. I think that is now under pressure. So that was probably a difficult job there. It was helped by looking at the original Big Bore 94. You can see it's a little bit similar, although it doesn't have exactly the same geometry either. But hopefully that's what we needed to do. Okay. Yeah, that's under pressure now. Okay, so you can see the original picture, there was a leaf spring. So these new guys have a coil spring. So it's entirely different than what my book has. So now we'll try putting this back in, and hopefully it works out here. The whole trick of this is you got to come in at the right angle, so you got to kind of drop it in there, and there we go. Now, I believe it was it that screw? I believe it was this screw right here. Come in from that direction.
Greg's putting back the stock. Getting near the finish line.
Well, nobody will be more surprised than I if this works out. Now we got the carrier. I believe the carrier goes in, oh yeah, it goes in that way. So let's figure out how that fits in there. Okay, that's under some spring tension there. And then we put that through. Now, you gotta fit this into the bolt, so it's gotta go through the carrier, into that little recess in the bolt, and then this has to come back, fit in that lug, and then you also have to push this back as far as possible to get it by there, and then you slip that pin back in, and then that pin was secured by this little screw here. So then you just screw that screw in. And then, if we've done everything right, we've only got one thing left to do. That's the only thing I'm worried about, is did I put the firing pin in correctly? Because if I didn't put the firing in correctly, we won't be able to put this last bolt in. So,
oh no.
in which case we'll have to take it all apart again.
Oh.
And you know what? That's not so bad, because it really helps you learn how everything works. So the last step is this pin and this retaining screw.
So good news?
Yep. Okay. So I just had to make sure that this hole lined up, and now it's functioning. So I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference, but let's try this empty again and see if it now ejects better. Everything appears to be working on it. It's ejecting better. So it was a little bit of gunk. And that's now much stiffer. The spring is much stiffer. Let's see if it'll eject slow. Yeah. So, takes a bit of courage, but there you go. It's not perfect. I'm not a gunsmith. I don't pretend to be a gunsmith, but it's hard to find one in town. So you got to end up doing a little bit of work yourself. And with ordinary intelligence, when you really look at these, they fit one way. Unless you're dealing with some kind of a monstrosity like, I hate to say it, but the Canadian Ross, the bolt could be put together that looked right two ways. That almost never ever happens. There's always a way that things seem to fit, and it's kind of an interesting little process to get through. So now, that cost me absolutely nothing. I've got a clean bore as a result of it. This is the first patch out of it. So you can clean it a little more aggressively from the back, so I cleaned the bore up, and now the extractor works, and I'll just take one go through and make sure all these screws are tight, and that's the 307 is back in shooting shape. And you can see that it does fire out the side, and I couldn't quite show that on the last one because much to my chagrin it wasn't working, and it's because this gun is almost like brand new. Somebody bought it and then never really shot it, so it still had all the factory gunk in it. So I might give it a little bit of a rem oil treatment since we're past the winter months. But this is the exact same thing you should do in the wintertime to make sure that your rifle's going to fire, because you know, quite often it's a little bit harder with a bolt, with a lever gun than a bolt. A bolt, you just have to strip the bolt basically, but here you have to take the whole thing apart. But it's still not that complicated, and it's good to know your firearm. So 307 Winchester, back in shooting shape. Thanks for watching.